Hello. Good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever your day finds you, and welcome to the Amazon Web Services Partner Webinar Series. Our topic today will feature enterprise document management and collaboration on AWS. I'm your host, Sherry Sullivan. I'm with the partner marketing team here in Seattle. And I'd like to remind folks that we are recording today's webinar. And while your lines are muted, we do invite you to submit questions anytime during this webcast, and we'll take a few moments at the end to answer those questions. I'd also like to remind folks that we do make our content available on AWS YouTube channel as well as SlideShare, and you will receive a link to this on-demand recording. I'm pleased to be joined today by Louis Salsa, who is the Director of Technology Alliances at Alfresco, which is one of our technology partners, along with Alfresco's customer, Steve Clements, who's the Director of Development at United Cerebral Palsy of Greater Chicago. And I also have Ryan Holland here with me, who is the Ecosystem Solution Architect with Amazon Web Services. We'll begin with just an overview today of Amazon Web Services and Cloudformation automating deployments, and will be followed with an overview of learning how the UCP leveraged Alfresco solutions to get control of their content management. And then we'll close out with some of the benefits of content management solutions with Alfresco. So we'll wrap up, as I said, with a few moments of Q&A, and with that, I'd like to introduce Ryan Holland. Please take it away, Ryan.
Thank you very much, Sherry, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So I just want to start off with, what is AWS or Amazon Web Services? And one of the things I find when people are new to AWS is they tend to be a little bit surprised just how many services we have. A lot of people are familiar with things like EC2 or S3, but AWS actually spans 25 different services that range from networking services, our core compute, storage, and database services, but also some very important application services as well as deployment services. And all of these are hosted inside our global infrastructure, and it allows customers to use those without having to build out any of their own facilities or infrastructure and run their applications on top of that platform. So I mentioned it's a global infrastructure, and as you can see, we span 5 different continents with our data centers, and we have 9 different regions in these 5 continents. And for us, a region is actually a cluster of highly redundant data centers that customers can leverage for deploying their applications and their data. And this is a continuously expanding global footprint, and as we continue to add capacity and additional regions to meet the needs of our customers, you'll see this grow over time. So why are customers choosing to deploy their applications on AWS? A lot of times people really start with the first 2 items on this slide, leveraging our economies of scale and being able to trade their capital expenses for operational expenses. And being able to save money is great, and once people get past that, though, they start looking at and they start appreciating even more the additional flexibility that you have with AWS that doesn't come with traditional infrastructure. So you're able to get to market very quickly. You're able to deploy a new application or a new service or start a new project. And you're able to do that without having to procure or rack and stack a whole bunch of hardware. And you also have a lot of flexibility in that if that project doesn't end up working out or you want to try something different, you're not locked into a 3-year depreciation cycle on a host of pieces of hardware. You can simply turn those services off and then stop paying for them. And you're able to, again, leverage our global infrastructure. So you can deploy replicas of your application or reach markets where it might not be cost effective for you to deploy a second set of your own physical infrastructure. And then lastly, you don't have to guess on capacity. And we'll cover that here in just a second when I show you a sample Alfresco deployment that I've used on AWS, where you're able to grow and shrink the size of your deployment based on your needs. So as I said, here's a sample Alfresco deployment that I've created on AWS, and it uses quite a number of our different services. So from starters, all of this is deployed in Amazon Virtual Private Cloud, or VPC, which is a logically isolated set of infrastructure that customers can use and control all sorts of networking aspects, from IP space to the subnets that they use, and it's completely logically isolated from all other resources. I'm also using our Elastic Load Balancer to direct traffic across multiple availability zones. So I wanted this to be a highly available deployment, and so my load balancer will will direct the traffic to the different availability zones that I've deployed in. I've used EC2 and auto-scaling for my Alfresco cluster. So I've created a cluster of Alfresco servers that are sitting behind my load balancer, and by leveraging our auto-scaling service, that cluster can grow to support from 10 users to 10,000 users. And I don't have to change anything on my deployment. It's all automatic, and as my load changes, my infrastructure is going to adapt with it and either grow or shrink based on the needs of my application. And then for storage of all of my Alfresco objects, we're leveraging Amazon S3. Amazon S3 is really a great storage choice for Alfresco. For one, it has 11 nines of durability, which means you don't have to worry about backing up all of that data. And if you remember when I talked about not needing to figure out, pre-size your environment, the Amazon S3 allows you to store objects ranging from size of 1 byte to 5 terabytes in size, and you can store an unlimited quantity of objects. So because I'm leveraging that for my shared storage, I don't have to think about how big is this deployment going to be from a storage aspect in 1 year or in 3 years, and overbuy or possibly underbuy my back-end storage system. I only have to pay for the storage that I'm actually consuming, and I can consume an endless quantity of that based on my needs. And then lastly, for the database that Alfresco leverages, not being a DBA myself, I didn't really want to have to deal with managing and setting up a database, so I leveraged our RDS, or Relational Database Service, for MySQL. And what this allows me to do is have the entire database tier managed by AWS. And it's done so in a multi-AZ, or so a multi-data center fashion, which means all of my data is replicated across 2 physical data centers. I'm presented with a single DNS name, and AWS handles any kind of failover should your master database have an issue. It also handles performing all of the database backups at the schedule I choose, and it will also And so there's quite a number of components that you can see there. And one of the really other interesting things is I can deploy this entire system in about 20 minutes. And it's not because I'm a fast typer. It's because of another service that we have called Cloudformation, which allows me to automate a deployment of AWS resources using a consistent scripting interface. So if we look at what is a Cloudformation deployment, it starts with the template. And the Cloudformation template is a JSON formatted file. So it's plain text, which is nice. It means I can check that into source control, and I can use that to do change control on my infrastructure. And that template is passed into the Cloudformation service, which will create that stack of resources. It also is the service I can use to update those resources later on. And then what comes out of that is what we call the stack, or the Cloudformation stack, which is that entire collection of resources that I defined in that template, and it's ready for use. And there's a couple features of the template that are really important to understand. The first one is its parameters that you can use. So you don't want to create a template that's only specific for me, right? I want something that can be used by other people, or that maybe I can leverage in other regions as well. And so we want to be able to take in different parameters. So the example we're showing here is which SSH key should we put on all of the instances so you can enable SSH access, which is extremely common. But I also could parameterize, for example, what size do I want my Alfresco instances to be? Do I want them to start out as M1 larges or M1 smalls? So you can pick that and make that a parameter, so customers can fill that in on their own. And then it also contains the set of resources that you want it to define. So for example, on the screen here, you can see the RDS component. So this is how we create a resource in AWS. So every single resource that was on that architecture diagram was defined in this manner using a JSON format. And then I can also customize those by defining different actions that I want it to take as well. So as you can see here, I've said, okay, once you start this instance, I want you to install a set of packages, or I want you to source a set of files from S3 and install different applications. And this allows me to then customize and configure those resources once they've started up. So this gives us a way to programmatically define our infrastructure and define all of our assets that are in there in a programmatic fashion. I can collaborate with other coworkers by using source control and things like GitHub to check in this template and share it with others. And I know that every time this template is ran, I'm going to have a known and consistent output. And that's really important. And then I'm allowed to, again, use parameters to customize that for future runs. And so now with that, I want to hand over to Luis from Alfresco.
Thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you, Sherry, for hosting us. So my name is Luis Sala, and I'm Alfresco's Director of Technology Alliances. Alfresco, we like to describe ourselves as the open platform for business-critical content management and collaboration. So let's parse that for a moment. By open platform, Alfresco, first and foremost, is at its core an open source platform, and we offer a wide variety of different APIs that conform to open standards such as content management interoperability services. On top of that, many of our customers and partners, SI partners, use Alfresco as an underlying repository for their content-centric applications, giving them the ability to use content in ways that are contextual to their business-critical processes. In addition to all that, Alfresco is inherently collaborative in nature, allowing you to collaborate with colleagues on projects and be able to achieve measurable business results. Alfresco is also used for a wide variety of different use cases. Some of the high-level use cases include file sharing and team collaboration, document management, which includes managing the metadata around the documents, so the information that describes these documents and distinguishes, say, a purchase order from a contract and from an invoice. We support records management and compliance, so these are things that support things like requirements such as retention of documents for compliance reasons, as well as defining other types of policies, so for example, legal holds, which might be applicable in the event of litigation or something along those lines. So all this together gives you Sarbanes-Oxley style compliance, and Alfresco also has been certified against the Department of Defense 5015.2 requirements. Digital asset management is a common use case also that's used for Alfresco. So Alfresco handles multimedia very nicely, and we'll see a little bit about this in the upcoming customer testimonial. Searchable archives are a popular use case, especially amongst academia and cultural organizations. So, for example, the Martin Luther King Foundation uses Alfresco as the repository for storing the works of Martin Luther King, and the New York Philharmonic uses Alfresco as well for storing and archiving a lot of their performances, musical scores, annotations, and so forth. And finally, Alfresco is used for web content publishing types of scenarios. So we have we power a lot of websites such as Fox.com and Sony Pictures Entertainment. Alfresco has been around for over 7 years, and collectively across the different installations of Alfresco, we've got over 4 billion files under management, a user base in excess of 7 million, across 3,000 enterprise customers distributed across 180 countries. Alfresco is designed to be scalable, and a lot of what we've done here with Amazon Web Services is capture our best practices for deploying a scalable, robust, fault-tolerant environment, and in a way that can be easily deployed by any customer on Amazon Web Services. And that's what Ryan's conversation about using Cloudformation comes into play. We've captured all these best practices into a simple Cloudformation template that allows you to deploy a scalable cluster in approximately 20 minutes. And this is something that's from a business acceleration perspective and so forth. So what that basically means is that we've got customers with that are managing over 100 million documents with a user base in excess of 100,000 users and ingesting in excess of 10,000 documents per day. So Alfresco is just very high performance, very scalable. We're also very integratable. Alfresco has been integrated into a wide variety of different products and suites. We support, for example, the full Microsoft Office stack. We have mobile applications that integrate with other mobile applications to allow you to be productive in a tablet-oriented environment. We integrate with Google Docs. We can publish information to social channels, allowing you to centrally manage your information and disseminate it in a wide variety of ways. Now, at its core, Alfresco offers a wide variety of features, and what I'd like you to do is just focus on the section in orange, which summarizes some of the key features that any content repository needs to support, and certainly Alfresco is capable of. And I'll just highlight the top three there: version control, custom metadata, indexing, and search. Beyond that, we certainly are capable of a lot more. You can see that we support workflow, compliance policies, etc., but we can discuss those perhaps during question and answer. And by the way, I do encourage you to use the Q&A panel to ask any questions about Alfresco or AWS or the customer, the UCP customer use case. And that's where we're going to hand it off to Steve Clements from the United Cerebral Palsy of Greater Chicago. It's always good to hear how customers actually put Alfresco into practice, and in this case they're doing it for of students and adults with disabilities. Steve, take it away.
Hey, well, thanks so much, and thanks for attending and taking the time to hear our story. We're delighted to share our experiences with both Alfresco and AWS. Both have been excellent partners for United Cerebral Palsy. I'm going to be sharing really two use cases with you. We are using Alfresco as both a web content management platform for one aspect of our program and also as a document repository for another aspect of our program. So what I'd like to do today over the next few minutes is give you just a very brief overview of who we are, United Cerebral Palsy, and then specifically a program of ours called Infinitetech, which is a really content-heavy program and really has driven us to these choices. I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about sort of the legacy choices and some of the pain that came along with those legacy choices and how that pain really pushed us to kind of set a new technology direction that involved both Alfresco and AWS. I'll give you an overview of the architecture of our two use cases and do a very quick demo so you can see how this all looks from an end user standpoint. And then I'll wrap up spending a couple of minutes talking about why we chose each of these two vendor offerings and what benefits we've derived from those offerings. So just a brief little bit about United Cerebral Palsy. Many of you here in the U.S. have probably heard of United Cerebral Palsy. It's a national organization with local sort of chapters or franchises, and we are United Cerebral Palsy of Greater Chicago. As is probably expected, if you look at our mission statement, we're all about advancing the independence of folks with disabilities, enriching their lives, and really advocating for inclusion in every facet of their life. We, as a United Cerebral Palsy entity, have been around since the early 50s, and we run a wide variety of programs. We do everything from building ramps on people's houses to help them get in and out. We run adult programs for adults with disabilities, and we serve birth to 3 and a huge population of schools through a program that we call Infinitetech. And so Infinitetech is one of our programs. We have many. And Infinitetech was started because our CEO came from the K-12 educational world, and he decided for us that one of the best ways we could impact the lives of people with disabilities is to work with schools to make sure that while that child with a disability is in school, that they maximize that experience. And we use, our focus is how can we help schools do a better job using technology to improve the lives of students with disabilities. There's no question that technology, when applied properly in the classroom, can be an absolute game changer for a student with a disability. And it's not all high-tech technology. I provided a few pictures here to kind of give you a view of the breadth of technology. It can be very simple things like a pencil grip that can help a child who has a hand issue or a mobility issue. It can be an easel to make the work surface more appropriate for a particular student with a physical disability. There's no question that iPads have changed the world of education, both for normally abled students as well as students with disabilities. For students without voices or the ability to speak, augmentative communication devices like the one pictured there offer voice to people who've never had a voice before. It's just amazing. And then the last example over on the right, one of the more complex systems for someone with a physical disability, we often see eye gaze systems that literally track the position of the student's eyeballs and allow them to navigate a pointer on a screen and make selections through the use of their eyes. So an amazing breadth of technology, and those are just 5 simple examples. There are literally tens of thousands of different pieces of technology that can be deployed in a classroom to help a student overcome a disability. The interesting thing about this is that schools, here in the U.S. anyhow, are literally required by law to provide the assistive technology that's deemed to be required for the student to be successful. And schools really struggle with this. They struggle with integrating the piece of technology into the student's life. They struggle with getting the support staff to understand how to use that technology with the student. They struggle with integrating the technology into the classroom. And then lastly, they struggle with integrating the technology into the curriculum. All very big, complicated issues. And, for schools that are struggling with budgets, focus and time, you think about all the initiatives going on in schools, the local expertise it requires that has to understand the technology and understand how to tackle the challenges. And then finally, the fact that there are really a lack of best practices for many of these things. So it's a real struggle for schools today, and that's really where our program comes in. We are all about, certain schools will have expertise in one area or another area. So they all have crumbs. They're all good at little bits and pieces of this. We pull these schools together into a membership-based coalition where we can collect the things that each of those schools are good at and turn those resources into a shared set of resources that we can make available to all of our member schools via the web. So we're a coalition of school districts. We're operating in 5 states here in the U.S. today. We're growing very quickly. We work with about 900 schools, and today we impact about 1.6 million students through those schools. So it's a huge program. It's growing quickly. We offer a variety of face-to-face services, but because we're growing and we're a small agency, we rely very heavily on online services. So we crowdsource and internally create tons of digital resources to help schools do a better job of providing access to the curriculum to students with disabilities. We do this primarily through a large web portal called myinfinitech.org. There are about 20,000 registered users. They're educational professionals, everybody from teachers to school administrators to occupational therapists, physical therapists, school psychologists, lots of paraprofessionals. So lots of different profiles of users. We have just under 300 different professional development presentations. We go out and we contract with the brightest and best thought leaders in the field. We create online learning modules to help schools do a better job. There are quizzes that go along with those so that educators can demonstrate competency. We host actually close to 2,000 different resource documents, each with links to the evidence that backs up the particular focus of that resource. Schools are very focused on everything needing to be evidence-based. We host lots of different lesson plans, lots of resources on how to deploy technology in the classroom, and we also now have created, using Alfresco, a library of mobile apps to help schools do a better job of selecting which mobile apps they should be deploying in their classroom on iPads and other mobile devices. Another component of the Infinitetech program is a program called Infinitekst. Lots of students have disabilities that make it difficult for them to handle the printed book. They may have visual impairments, they may have a physical disability that restricts their ability to relate to a book, or they may have learning disabilities. So Infinitekst offers access to the curriculum in scanned and digital formats. There are about 15,000 files that are stored within Infinitekst today, each representing a piece of the curriculum. Those pieces of the curriculum have been scanned and uploaded by school districts that participate in this program. We offer a very intuitive self-service website where they can come and download these files for use with students with disabilities, and we support multiple different formats. So very good application for document management, and we'll talk about that a little later as we look at the architecture and demo it. A little bit about the history. We're a not-for-profit charity, so we tend to like to do things on the cheap. We started out with a homegrown platform for myinfinitech.org, literally built by volunteers, no content management, all static, and literally, I'm not lying, we had servers in closets. So it was not a very good solution back in the early 2000s, actually through most of the 2000s. We migrated in 2009 to a vendor platform. Again, being a not-for-profit, we tend to beg a bit, and SchoolWires was gifted to us, and we ran on that platform for about a year. It was a hosted platform really designed for K-12 schools. If you have a kid in school and that school has a website, there's a pretty good chance that that website is powered by SchoolWires. It really wasn't a good fit for us. In addition, it had limited content management and, again, largely static HTML pages. Those legacy platforms really created a number of pain points for the organization. First of all, I should mention that technology management is not a core competency of a mid-sized social service agency. We tend to be very program-focused and not very technology-focused. So we struggled with managing our own technology. It was a little better when we moved to SchoolWires, and that solution was hosted for us, but it was not ideal. Vendor's proprietary system lacked flexibility. The SchoolWires system was built for school districts. It didn't fit us really well. There were registration issues. We need to collect specific information. We couldn't extend that system. We ran into lots of reporting issues. And content management has always been a problem for us. We host a lot of different types of content. We need to integrate to one of the Adobe products called Adobe Connect for our e-learning modules and learning administration. And the management of our content in general was just a very slow and costly endeavor. Our content managers were not technical folks. Most of them were not even really familiar with HTML. It was difficult for them to post content on their own. They needed to get technical resources involved, and it was a slow and arduous process for us. The user experience was also not very good. The registration process was very cumbersome, again, because we needed to collect custom information that was not supported. And because it was all flat HTML, there were many, many, many layers and levels of pages that all of this flat content was organized on. And we regularly heard feedback from our user community that it was just too difficult to navigate and way too many clicks. I joined United Cerebral Palsy in 2008, about the time that our previous systems were collapsing under their own weight, and we knew we needed to do something differently. We met a local systems integrator here in Chicago, which I'll just put in a little plug for. They're an amazing organization, Technology Services Group. We met them through a board member. They are completely focused on enterprise content management. They're both a developer and an integrator. They are a very high-level partner with Alfresco, and they've just done a great job for us. They were very open source and content management. They were expert in both of those areas, both important to us. They were they had a good understanding of AWS. We knew we wanted to AWS. We knew we wanted to end up in the cloud. We weren't sure it was going to be Amazon when we started. We appreciated the fact that they had a lot of cloud expertise. They also took a very agile approach to development, and we knew they could get us there quickly. We first tackled the Infinitetech, that's the document repository. It took us about 4 months to bring that project to market on Alfresco and AWS. We did that back in 2008. In 2010, then, we attacked the myinfinitech.org website, which is an Alfresco and LifeRay solution. I'll talk about that in just a second. And that was launched on AWS in 2010, and that was about an 8-month project for us to get that website up from literally first concept, first discussion, through launch was an 8-month process. And since the launch, we've gone through a number of fairly significant enhancements to that in terms of new applications. So with that, I'll switch gears and I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the architecture for each of these 2 use cases. And we'll start with the Infinitext example. And this you'll remember is the document repository containing digital formats of textbooks and other classroom reading that's provided to students with print disabilities. So it's, of course, hosted on the Amazon cloud. We use elastic computing, we use elastic IP, and we use the S3 storage service. I would not call us exotic users of AWS. We're probably more one of their basic customers, but it works very, very well for us. So this is an AWS-hosted solution. Alfresco is the content management solution here, the document management solution. It houses many textbooks in multiple formats, some standard PDF, MP3, text, rich text, and also some proprietary. The KES format is a format that is a proprietary format related to one particular piece of software. So it was important to us to have something that was very flexible in terms of document formats. We do something interesting with Infinitetech. We have completely shielded the end users from any of the user interface, any of the Alfresco user interface. TSG has developed a product called HPI, High Performance Interface, which has allowed us to develop a completely customized user interface around the Alfresco platform. So the users never see an Alfresco screen. And finally, the end users, whether they're school districts that are downloading content or our content managers who may be uploading or managing content, they all access that solution through TSG's high-performance interface. And I'll demonstrate that for you in a short time. Moving on then to the second component, or the second use case, a bit more complicated. This is the myinfinitech.org example. Again, hosted on the AWS cloud, and if we kind of start in the center of this diagram, obviously Alfresco is the content management solution, and we use that repository to house a variety of different documents. We also have content that's stored externally to Alfresco. I mentioned Adobe before. We use Adobe's Connect platform for our learning management system, and we have a wide variety of other external content. The metadata for all of that external content, in addition to the metadata for all the content housed in the repository, is all stored in Alfresco. So Alfresco becomes the master metadata repository. In some cases, that metadata points to a document that's on the Alfresco platform. In other cases, that metadata points to a document or a component that lives outside of the Alfresco repository. Down in the lower left-hand side of this, our content managers use the standard Alfresco share interface, which is a web-based interface that allows us to manage the metadata, manage the content that's stored in Alfresco. On top of Alfresco, then, you see the LifeRay application. LifeRay is another open source solution that we totally love. It is a portal solution. It controls all of the user interface styling. It controls all of the user management. All of the static content from the website is built on LifeRay, and all of the connectivity, and we use LifeRay for its ability to manage community. We chose Liferay because it was open source. We liked that there were lots and lots of Fortune 500 companies using it. Gartner loved it, and it had won a number of InfoWorld awards, and it is proven to be a really good solution for us. The Liferay Alfresco combination works well for us. TSG, our development partner, was very comfortable with that combination of solutions, and it's worked very well. So end users access the system and see Liferay. Liferay logs into Alfresco, presents the metadata, presents the content, based on UI styling through Liferay. As users access that content, the content is either served up from the Alfresco repository, or the metadata is used to access that piece of content if it lives outside, such as on Alfresco or some of the other outside resources that we have. So with that, what I'll do is switch gears here, and I will give you a brief overview of what this looks like to customers who use these solutions. So I am in the process of sharing my screen. We'll wait for this to connect here. I have already logged in to the myinfinitech.org website. So this is the web portal, and all of the I logged in using Liferay's authentication. Liferay then went ahead and authenticated me to Alfresco, to the repository, so I have access to all of the metadata and content that's there. So again, all of the styling on the screen, all of the user interface navigation is coming from Liferay. So to begin to take a look at how the content is served up here, I'm going to go to the Resources tab, and you'll see that there's a large submenu of resource categories that are used by educators who may be looking for resources in a particular area. I'll just jump down to Reading here for a second. Click on it. We come to a static landing screen that is driven by, the right side's driven by Liferay. Left side, the menu is actually driven dynamically by content that exists in the content model. So we know that there's educational enrichment activity under Reading that's in the content model, so that menu choice appears. If I click on educational enrichment and give the screen just a second to catch up here, you're now seeing metadata content being presented from Alfresco. There's a tabbed system across the top that again is being populated by the content model that exists within Alfresco, and then individual resources appear, things like icons driven by the metadata, titles, descriptions, and if I clicked on one of these things, I'd be taken to the actual document or piece of content. And again, as I click on the various tabs on the top, web scripts, the screen portlet here is driving web scripts that are pulling content from Alfresco, hitting style sheets within Liferay, and that content is being presented in a very, very pleasant way to users. Same is true for all those other resource categories. You look here just down a little bit, you see that we have podcasts. There's a rich collection of downloads. I'll click on downloads for just a second, and you can see again that there's a grid system here on the lower half of the screen where content is being served up from Alfresco based on scripts that are contained in the portlets here within Liferay, and the appropriate content is being displayed. As I click across the top, new web scripts are running based on the portlet, and appropriate content is being served up. So it's a very, very seamless integration. The connections between the two, I think, speak very clearly to the open nature of Alfresco and the fact that it's very easy for us to use web services, APIs, to connect to from the portlets here on Liferay to create a very seamless and very responsive user interface from the user's perspective. I'll give you one more example. I'll click over to the online classroom here, and this is where those almost 300 professional development presentations are housed, and I'll just click down the screen here a little bit and let the screen catch up for just a second. So there are many channels of content here. I just clicked on the resource selector, and you can see that we have many, many different channels of content. Again, clicking on a channel causes a web script to run, which accesses the appropriate content from the content model on Alfresco, and the content is served up. If I chose to play one of these, we would be accessing the metadata on Alfresco to find out the correct URL for that piece of content over on the Adobe server. So again, the seamless nature of the content outside of the Alfresco repository was really, really important to us and has worked really well. The last example I'll give you here is I'm going to jump over to the most recent application we built, and it's an app search application. So iPads have had a huge impact on classrooms. Schools struggle with understanding which are the best apps to use for a particular situation. So we wanted to provide a tool to help schools do that. So we run this crowdsourced application database where teachers who have experience with applications can submit them. We curate that. We collect a huge amount of metadata about each application. We figure out how they fit into Bloom's taxonomy. Scrolling down a little bit, we figure out how each of the applications relate to Common Core standards, which are important to schools. We track whether the application is free, a number of other bits of metadata about each application. So this teacher coming in wanting to find a particular application can use the faceted search techniques on the left-hand side, and by selecting making search selections, they will filter down the list of applications to find the one that they are looking for. We've implemented some of Alfresco's community and kind of social aspects in terms of allowing comments and ratings on each of these applications. So I think what you see in this last example is how we've been able to not only use Alfresco as kind of a content model, but also a content management system, but also are able to use it as a platform to develop kind of an interesting web application that has been very, very popular with the educators who use this platform. All right, the next thing, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to jump over to the Infinitetech application. Oops, I've been timed out. Give me 1 second to log back in here. So you'll remember the Infinitetech application is the repository for scanned books for kids with print disabilities. Give me 1 second here to get logged back in.
Yeah, while you do that, this is what you're seeing so far is a prime example of Alfresco as a platform. You're not seeing the out-of-the-box Alfresco user interface, but rather Alfresco being consumed by other types of applications, and it points out the overall flexibility of that platform and the use of standard APIs that we provide. Ultimately, all the data, all the content is stored on AWS, of course, on S3, on database, and so forth and so on. But Alfresco acts as a way of categorizing the information and retrieving it so that these applications can be supported.
Exactly. So at this point, I've logged in and authenticated into the Infinitetech application. So we wanted to provide a really nice, user-friendly way for educators to come in and search this repository. So what you're seeing here is the presentation layer created by TSG's high-performance interface, again, shielding the user from any of the Alfresco screens. We give them a variety of ways to access the metadata to search for the particular book they're looking for. I just pumped in an ISBN number. I'll click search, and we see that a book was found. I click on the title of that book, and you'll see that we then store that book in multiple formats. Again, pointing to the fact that for having a platform that was able to support many different formats was important for us. So whether it's text only, which is the format we're looking at here, or if we scroll down a little bit, there's audio versions in MP3 format or PDFs. So those formats, are obviously of different levels of usefulness depending on a student's disability. There's download links here, which allow the end user to quickly access and download the content. We also provide the user the ability to create books. Remember, this is a crowdsourced application. So up here, there's create new book, add new chapters. Again, so there's no use of the share interface. all of the creation of new content is done through this same interface. So that's demo. I will jump back then to my next slide. And so I want to spend a little bit about why we selected Alfresco and why we selected Amazon. Content, we knew we needed a content management solution. We went out and surveyed CMS solutions, and really for us, all signs pointed to Alfresco. There was a strong history of reliability, performance. We knew it would be scalable. We have plans of growing this program. We've expanded into 2 new states in the last year, and we have planned to do more of that. Flexibility was important to us. As was just pointed out, we needed more than just a document management solution. We needed a platform. Though we've not used it yet, we know that there's very rich collaboration and workflow. As we get more sophisticated in our content management and we do more crowdsourcing and curation, we plan to implement the collaboration and workflow aspects of it. Engineered for AWS. Once we had selected Amazon as the platform, it became important to us to select a content management system that played well with Amazon. And we had originally experimented a little bit with Documentum, one of Alfresco's competitors. And in addition, for a number of reasons, we ended up with Alfresco. But one of them was the fact that we just felt that Alfresco was much better suited to the AWS environment, a much smaller footprint, made it easier to deploy, easier to scale up. And we're delighted that Alfresco and AWS have now gotten together and continue to improve the offering. We're looking forward to a better level of integration as we go forward. And then lastly, open source was very important to us. We're cheap. We're a not-for-profit charity, and we wanted to start with the community version, and when we were comfortable, grow into the enterprise version, and we were able to do that. It was also very important to us that it was standards-based, and as was referred to earlier, the availability of the APIs really allowed this to be a platform upon which we could develop. In terms of Amazon, why we selected Amazon, well, we knew we wanted to outsource, so it was a critical part of our decision. And it was absolutely clear to us that after looking at a number of solutions, and we looked at a half a dozen. We looked at IBM, we looked at LeaseWeb, we looked at Terramark, we looked at Savvis, we looked at a couple of other local sort of rent space in Iraq, and none of them seemed like the right solution. It was absolutely clear that AWS was the market leader. It's kind of like they used to say about the IBM guys. Nobody ever got fired for selecting IBM. We kind of feel the same way about Amazon today in terms of that crowd solution. And we were very focused on reducing our operational costs. We wanted a scalable solution, and really we wanted peace of mind. We didn't want to be worrying about backups. We wanted it to be elastic. We wanted to be able to grow with it. In terms of some of the quantifiable benefits that we've experienced over the last few years with this solution, our content publishing efficiencies have just been amazing. We've seen at least a 2x increase or decrease in our ability to get new content online, which has just been amazing for our organization. We've also seen almost a 20% decrease in the amount of technical resources required to manage this entire solution. And that's important for us. We don't have a lot of technical expertise. We typically go out and buy it when we need it, so it's turned into real financial savings for us. Our unplanned downtime has been reduced by almost 70%, which is just amazing to us. From a total cost of ownership standpoint, first of all, our finance people are just delighted at the fact that we are now able to manage this as an ongoing operational expense that is able to be scaled very directly and very connected to how our business scales, as opposed to unplanned capital costs where, the addition of a few more customers resulted in the addition of a, $15,000 server. And we've really seen a large decrease in our costs over the last 24 months. We've saved about 63% if you take away the cost of the new applications we've been able to develop, just in terms of kind of an apples-to-apples comparison between what it cost us to buy and manage our own equipment as opposed to doing it in this environment. So it's been a great, great solution for us. Thanks. I'll look forward to any questions you might have during the Q&A session. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to Sherry.
Actually, I'll take this next part, and
Okay.
thank you so much, Steve.
Oh, sure.
This demonstrates how Alfresco can be used, as I said before, as a platform for building content-centric applications, and how AWS can deliver a wide variety of different benefits, not just from a purely technical perspective, but also from a business and operational perspective, being able to reduce overall costs, fast time to market, and overall flexibility of the actual platform. So I'd like to encourage attendees to check out our Alfresco AWS a landing page where you can learn a little bit about Alfresco, including be able to try Alfresco on the AWS Marketplace. You can learn more about the UCP case study, including being able to download a white paper as well as a video featuring Steve at the URL listed here. So I'll keep that slide up for just a few more moments, and I'll pass it along to Sherry so you can do the Q&A.